After traveling for nearly a week, the party finally arrives at the edge of the gloomy forest. Before them lies a large stone mountain, at the base of which is a cave that looks as though it goes deeper and deeper down into the darkness. The guide, who led the parties through the forest, turns to them and says, "I go no farther, for here there be dragons." Welcome back to Mad Mouse Games. As you know, dragons have been the center of many a story, movie, and even video games. Because of that, they're a huge part of nerd culture. As such, I decided it was time for me to paint my very first dragon. So, let's get into it.
So today I'm painting this dragon from the Reaper Bones 5 core set. They named it Narthalyssk, and I decided to paint it as a green dragon. So part of the reason I did that is because I think it is the most similar to the D&D monster manual depiction of a green dragon that Reaper Bones did in this last core set. So I decided I was going to paint it a nice green color. I decided to start with this dark green as a base coat. And again, when I base coat, I just use as big a brush as possible to get as much coverage over the surface area as possible. And then I just thin that down so that it doesn't leave globs and leaves a lot of the detail behind. So here you can see me base coating the spines. After I put down the darker color, I decided to put a lighter color on here to just kind of show the contrast for now. And that's something that ended up staying for the most part in the final product because it ended up giving it a pretty nice look. But I also painted the wings this way to begin with as well, but I changed the wings a lot later, and that's something I'll talk about when I talk about how I painted the wings and tried to make those look very realistic. But the rest of this model, for the most part, painting all the scales, I just did a heavy dry brushing of lighter and lighter green on the model until I was applying just very small amounts of dry brushing on just the highest regions that would be hit by light, mostly on the shoulder, the muscles, the thighs, and the top of the head is where I did most of those highlights, as well as on the tail where it curves upward toward the sky a little bit. I did put some of those higher ones there. But while dry brushing this miniature, again, instead of adding green and white together to make lighter and lighter layers, I decided to add yellow, and it ended up giving the model a very nice look. And the reason I did that was in the monster manual, I noticed that the green was a lot of green and kind of yellowish green colors, and so I just kept adding paints like that. Especially when doing highlights like this, I would add quite a bit of lighter yellow paint, and it just gives it a nice kind of warmer tone, probably, than just adding straight white to this green. And when I came through with these highlights, just be very careful when doing any kind of highlighting like this so that you don't mess up any of your other work. But if you do, just grab some of the paint left on your palette from your previous layer and add it back on there. And that's something that I did, and you can see here on some of the higher areas where it's a lighter paint already. And so that's basically what I just did for the scales, is lots and lots of dry brushing, and it ended up giving it a real nice look. For the underbelly on this dragon, I decided to go with a nice darker brown, and then I figured I would layer up lighter browns onto this and leave the green deep in the cracks instead of coming back through later and doing a wash. And so I just tried to hit just the scales and try not to get that paint down in there. I wasn't super successful at it, but it was good enough that I didn't end up going back in later Although at some point I might go back in there with just a black to do little black lines in between each scale. And that's something I thought about doing but didn't for this project because I thought it ended up looking good enough, and I don't want to take away from anything that I'd already painted with the finished product. So here you can see me just adding a little bit of layering in on each of the scales, leaving just the darker brown around the edges, and that was basically what I did with the underbelly, as well as with the same little scales that are on its knees and shins going down to its toes. And then finally, before getting to the wings, I just painted the claws black, as well as the face, the teeth, the tongues, and the eye. So this is the dragon before I decided to redo the wings, because I didn't feel like it was very realistic. In real life, there's something called subsurface scattering. Now, subsurface scattering is basically this. The light behind skin shines through the skin. And just like with this ear here, there's a lot of the original light behind it. So I decided to paint the wings this yellow color. I then went in with a very thinned down light green paint that I had also mixed with that same yellow. Now, the reason I did this was because I wanted to make it look like the wings were somewhat see-through, almost like a bat's wing, if you've ever seen a bat flying around at night and have a light behind it. I wanted it to have that kind of a look. So first thing I did was apply this light green paint all over the yellow undercoat. Now, you can kind of see that a lot of that yellow undercoat has disappeared at this point. And after I saw that, I was like, well, I can go back through and just put yellow on and then put green back on and then yellow on and then green and then yellow and then green. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to try something a little bit different. Now, this is something that I have done some thinking about, and it's what's called, I think it's called subtractive painting. But basically what it is you paint an undercoat, then you paint a highlight on top of it. And now I'm going back through with a wet brush and wiping off a lot of that second layer of paint to reveal the undercoat. Now this is really nice because it, one, creates a really nice blend between the two, as well as a lot of those darker areas or more recessed areas will keep the highlighted color, which creates some really nice looking wings in my opinion. So what I'm doing is I'm just got an old brush and I'm just scrubbing off that first layer or the second layer of paint back down to the first layer. Now, when I did this, I did have a couple of problems where I either brushed off too much and actually took the undercoat of paint off, which could probably be solved by simply priming your base, which is something that I might do in the future on something like this. But I just came back through here with a yellow wash. I just thinned it down really heavily and reapplied it over those areas that either went down too dark or that I wanted to make it a little bit lighter yellow near some of the edges of the wings. And this just helped to bring even more of a balance to the blending and to really make it look like it was an actual wing that went together. So here's another view of me scrubbing off that top layer to get to the yellow underlayer or undercoat beneath this light green. And this isn't something that's even hard at all, but it was something I had to think a lot about before actually doing. And it was pretty nerve-wracking at first, but once I saw the result on the one side of the wings, I did it to everything else, and it ended up looking really nice. And again, if you take off too much of the green paint, you can always go back and add more green on, and if you feel like you didn't take off enough green, you can add a little bit of a yellow wash to kind of blend it together and make it look really nice like this. And then to finish off the wings, I just came through and put some black on all the little, I don't know what you call those, they're not really fingers, but kind of the pieces that go through each of the wing flaps, and ended up looking pretty nice. And this is the finished product. All in all, I thought that this green dragon ended up coming out pretty dang good, and for it being my first dragon that I've done, I am excited to get to the other ones that came in the core set and in the expansions that I bought. I thought about going back through on some of these back veins and doing the same thing I had done with the wings, but I really wanted to draw attention to those wings, and I didn't want to subtract from that by doing the same to all the spines on the back. But I was very happy with the way that this turned out all in all, and to be honest, painting the wings was probably the hardest part. It took the longest time to think about how I was going to do it, and then in doing it also took some time. I actually had to apply, I think I ended up applying 5 or 6 coats of paint to the wings before actually coming up with something that I liked. So if you don't like the way something's turning out, just keep trying, and this will be an awesome piece that you can throw on your gaming board. And if you liked watching this video, please leave a like, comment what you want to see me paint next, and subscribe if you want to see more. Again, thank you for watching, and you have a wonderful day.